My Glasgow off that flight, well, it was only 1.5 hours. It was EasyJet, it wasn't Ryanair anyway. It was Bristol to Berlin. So why don't you come with me? It's an architectural video with architectural subjects in abundance and one of Europe's finest cities. I've been here twice before, first in 2007 as part of a multi-city tour involving Prague and Rome, and the second time was in the winter, a very different, a very snowy Berlin. And this time, unsurprisingly, it was different again.
I've had the worst haircut I've had in years. Look, I got completely shaved by the Turkish barber before I left. But that hasn't put me off. And the main thing is I've come over here for two reasons. One is to recce the place for a potential tour. I've been probably about 15 years ago, and then again about 13 years ago in the winter. But I want to do an architectural tour, which I think will be very easy to do and yield a lot of very exciting abstract pictures. The second reason is because my wife is on she's on a
history recce, communist, Cold War, World War II,
Hitler, Cold War, communist recce for a school trip. So we got things a bit cheaper, which is also really good. But regardless, here is my first subject of my hit list. I'm not too sure how I'm going to photograph this, but have a look at this wonderful building. So here it is, the Axel Springer building. Really unusual piece of modern architecture. I was pretty amazed by it when I saw it online, although I don't know how to photograph it at the moment, so let's continue walking around. Well, by the look of this window, I'm sure I could do this some justice. It's actually a publishing house. Rachel's just been in the building opposite to ask. So here we are at Potsdamer Platz, and lurking behind those buildings is a fantastic circus tent. You can just about pick out a little bit of purple in there, but let's go on in and explore it. Here it is, the beautiful circus tent ceiling of Potsdamer Platz, of the Sony Centre. Unfortunately, with lots of scaffolding underneath it. So that's writing this one off, I'm afraid. What a shame.
After changing camera perspective and position, I managed to come up with these three. And yes, that is a roof that changes colour. It's not white balance.
So after finding out that we were actually on the railway station and not actually on the underground station, we finally made it to the underground trains. Wonderful old yellow trains that are very noisy, as I'm sure you can hear. But it's got me thinking about some photography on the underground stations as well, because apparently there's some very good ones. They're very symmetrical, so I'm going to give it a try over the next few days. Look at that lovely yellow train. It's very Art Deco, isn't it? With its round lights and its tiling. So this tower block is over the road from my hotel. Just look at it. Okay, it's the usual cross-wall construction. It's very much a standard rectangular shape, but just look how clean it is. And just think about the residents that live in it. There's no crap hanging out the windows and flags and other stupid stuff. It's just all nice and neat, and that's a classic sign of Germany and German architecture. Very proud and respectful. Here it is, Checkpoint Charlie. There used to be flag-waving American soldiers here, but it seems like that little thing has now disappeared. This was, what was this, Rach?
Right, we are in the West German section, West Berlin section. We're at Checkpoint Charlie. So over there is East Berlin, and this was where the Americans were stationed and at the crossing point. And in the early 1960s, I think it was 1963, there was basically American tanks on this side, German tanks on that side, and they basically had a standoff, and they were really worried that this could escalate.
So I'm here at the Tempodrom, I think it's called. It looks like the Brazilian cathedral in Brasilia. It's an amazing pointed building, and I've got an idea of what I'm going to shoot based off a couple of little lights that are down the bottom.
Now, if I'd had a socket set, I'd have undone that light on the right-hand side and given it a slight twist. but my low camera angle hides this problem.
So here I am, I'm back at Potsdamer Platz again. I don't remember any of this stuff on the right. I think most of this didn't used to be here. A couple of buildings behind me used to be here, but lots of this is now newly built. Have a look at this wonderful building. It's called the Otto Bock Science Centre. It's essentially a rectangular tower block with about 6 floors. But just look at how cleverly it's been designed, with its beautiful attention to detail on the windows. Superb. Well, I wasn't expecting that. More problems with renovation. So sadly, this is no longer the premier photo site that it used to be. And that's mainly down to the fact that there's quite a lot of damage that's now happening to this place. It's subsiding, and also there's a lot of water damage on the concrete blocks themselves, which means they've got cracks, and the surfaces that used to be reflective are now no longer reflective, and they're covered in green moss and algae with water lines all pulled down the sides. I don't know. I think overall there possibly is some potential pictures, but with the cafe now gone as well, this means that it's going to be pretty hard to get anything out of this now and in the future. So it turns out that I'm saved, even though all the building work is going on the other side, blocking out the circle to the south face. The west face is actually accessible with only a small amount of hoarding and a portaloo or two in the bottom right corner of the frame. So people walk in front of this gigantic circle and it becomes extremely interesting because it provides that all-important sense of scale. So I'm going to come back certainly at some time later this afternoon and see if I can get some better photographs. There it is, so there's the cube. That's another one on the architectural hit list today. One thing I've really noticed since I was last in Berlin is just how sociable everything has got. I love all these deck chairs, and the fact that the DJ over there in the cafe is playing some really tasteful techno on this Monday bank holiday afternoon. Really good, really enjoyable, nice vibe. This lovely building is the Berlin railway station.
So inside the Hauptbahnhof station there are plenty of places to shoot from. And yes, I probably did crop up on every CCTV camera, yet no security gave me any problems whatsoever. The travel escalators and staircases have that real Escher feel, but it's the harmony of shopping precinct and railway infrastructure in a very modern open plan building, more visually open than let's say something like Birmingham New Street, that makes this an easy and very enjoyable shoot.
These beautiful double-decker trains are something to behold. Inside, they have a sort of a top deck and a bottom deck. Extremely efficient, extremely punctual. We have a lot to learn in our country. One of the things I've realised about being in here is that although there's a distinct lack of 90-degree angles, it's still very linear. But because of this, it's not very tiring on the mind. So I'm off to see one of my favourite buildings. It's the Shell House, or the Gassag building as it's also known. It's a beautiful wave shape, very abstract, and looks very good with a long lens, and also quite close up with a wide angle lens.
This building was designed by Emil Fahrenkamp, and in 1929 there was a competition between 5 architects to determine the designer of a prestigious new office block that was going to house the headquarters of a mineral oil company. The Gassag is otherwise known as the Shell House. This is widely regarded as Fahrenkamp's masterpiece, but it's sad to imagine that in 1940 it was riddled with bullet holes, so it had to be heavily restored.
So here we are, we're in Kurfürstendamm. It's a large shopping area, a lovely white tower block there on the left I just photographed, and looking across to Kurz and Atz, in other words C&A. Yes, they didn't go out of business, they're still going on the continent, just not in the UK. I'll shake your hand. Continuing my appreciation of cultural monuments and the scaffolding that they contain. Yes, more bloody scaffolding. Here's an old favourite. I can't remember what it is or what it symbolises, but it's pretty unique and it's pretty excellent.
So, this sculpture was built in 1987 to celebrate the 750th anniversary of Berlin. It was basically, it's two chains, two links in a chain that are actually broken, come together but not quite together, which shows the two sides of Berlin as a city, east and west, which are almost together but not quite, because remember, this is 2 years before the Berlin Wall came down.
Right, it's time for a funky hotel. Look at this one. This is Motel 1. A beautiful structure. Super large as well. Amazing windows. Beautiful white facade as well. Very impressive, and an important part of my abstract architecture that I seem to be doing quite a lot of at the moment today. One of the things I've noticed all over Berlin, and especially down here in Kurfürstendamm, are these truck blocks. It's a phone box that has become a book library. So drop your book off when you finish reading it and somebody else can pick it up. So a great day today. Found some new targets. Also found the Octagon House, and that's exactly where I'm headed now. Unfortunately, the sun was right across the left-hand side of it. It's a lie on the ground and shoot vertically upwards with a fisheye lens. So going back to that, and then finally going back to the Axel Springerhausen, which is next to Checkpoint Charlie, just to finish off and see if I can get a good result from that. So wish me luck. So not my normal pose for taking photographs. Just look at this. So this is the Octagon. And now look at it, it looks beautifully balanced from left to right. I've managed to get the sky to polarize, so it'll make a really interesting shot when I get back.
It turned out so well. The fisheye lens is a critical tool for the architectural photographer. And now for some symmetrical architectural underground station fun.
U5 nach Karlsdorf.
So I've had a wonderful afternoon this afternoon on the Underground. I've been photographing the very colourful stations, very symmetrical photography today. And I'm off to Spandau, where there's this very glassy looking, very unusual, I would say borderline Art Deco railway station. And I'm going to circle back into the centre of town after I've done that one. Now you may be thinking CCTV, security, railway stations, probably not really that great for a large camera. And you would be correct, but I've had no trouble here in Berlin whatsoever, which has been a wonderful part of today's experience. In fact, the only trouble I've had was in Pret a Manger, when the guy behind the counter walked up to me after I'd been sat down for 15 minutes and said, what are you taking photos of? And I said, oh, I'm just on the Underground. And he said, oh, I'm worried about you taking pictures of girls. And he was referring to the immigrant girls, no doubt, that behind the counter, who probably are here illegally. And I explained to him that I've been shooting railway stations and showed him my pictures. And other than that, like I said, that's the only trouble I've had since I've been here all week. So it's a really friendly place to be with a camera, and I can't recommend it enough. Well, it's another lush day in Berlin, and I'm here on the second to last day. Was going to go down on the Underground, but weather's just too good, so I'm going to head off and try and do some infrared on Museum Island. Have a look at this. This is the Humboldt Forum. I want to show you the other side though. So it's modern on one side, and historical on the other. Now you might be thinking that this is just a rehashed old building that's been cleaned up, but apparently this is all completely brand new. So although we're inclined to think that this sort of architecture is long gone and there's no way we could ever repeat it, have a look at that. Apparently the whole site used to be occupied by a building until 2008 when it was demolished. And all this has been built in the last 15 years. This really is a remarkable architectural achievement. And to think that this was only finished 2 years ago and the finishing touches were only put onto this last week or the week before.
Okay, so this building is an art museum, but it was one of Hitler's favourite buildings because he liked the architecture of it. It's a very grand building with all the pillars, etc. So he would often stand on the steps over there and give lots of speeches, and there's photographs of this whole area covered in lots of people listening to Hitler.
Another viable entry for Scaffolding Photographer of the Year. Just my luck.
This is the inside of Berliner Dom, or Berlin Cathedral. Jesus is your friend here, but symmetry and precision are also your friends. The problem I have when I visit cathedrals is that I just can't stop shooting, and I have to limit myself to just the vistas, so to speak, rather than all the statues, gilding and ornate details that are in abundance inside these spectacular historical buildings. Well, the reason's purely commercial. How do I gain a property release on the capital city's cathedral to sell these images? It's just unfeasible. Climb the open staircase and enjoy views of the city. It turns out to be very horizontal, something I really wasn't expecting, with literally no buildings breaking the skyline whatsoever.
My wife managed to get me and her a free place on this boat trip. So she is a keeper after all.
This surely must be a sign of age, but I really do enjoy getting on a riverboat, meandering my way down through canals and waterways, comfortably exploring the city from a different perspective, just as much as I do from the top deck of an open-air bus. Many of these experiences have yielded some very strong photography. Didn't really in this case, but it was a very leisurely way to spend a summer afternoon, considering the intensity of running around Berlin's infrastructure and photographing all those fantastic underground stations. As our friends on the pink chairs demonstrate, it's important to relax, but may I remind you to always keep your radar spinning.
So this is German Reichstag. In 1933 this was burnt down. This is instrumental in Hitler coming to power because the Reichstag fire was blamed upon the communists because a communist called van der Lubbe was actually found at the scene. Was he framed by the Nazis? Who knows? But anyway, they blamed the communists for this, and then they arrested 3,000 communists the day after, which then meant that Hitler could take emergency powers, pass the Enabling Act, and boom, becomes a dictator.
So last thing we've done on Thursday is come here to the Reichstag. I've got a wide angle lens, I've got a fisheye lens, and I'm going to distort the hell out of it. What a clever way of making an air intake. But this impossible funnel of glass, angled glass plates makes a mesmerising centrepiece for the German Parliament. I can't think of anything better that they could have designed here, to be completely honest.
After the Reichstag fire, the dome on the top burnt down. So after the World War II, when the communists took over here, they basically placed a flag on top of the Reichstag, claiming that they got here first before the Allies. And the actual photo that you see of that was actually taken, though, 2 days after and was staged. The communists never rebuilt the top of the glass dome, it was left. And then the glass dome was eventually built in 1990. Norman Foster, the architect, built it, designed it, and it's glass because it's meant to signify openness between the two sides of east and west.
So this thing on the right hand side is actually a sun visor that rotates around to stop the place getting incredibly hot.
So there you have it, Berlin in a nutshell. We finish inside a glass and steel nutshell. It's always a good sign of a quality location when you feel there is unfinished business. Why not visit my website at davidclapp.co.uk, where you can find further images and tours in Europe and across the world. That's it from Rachel and I, and let's not forget to mention our photographic sponsor, Negative Space.